Thanks for joining me. My name is Chris Litt. I'm a trip designer and guide for Mongolia trips, and as you can see, I'm just enjoying some Mongolian music videos, remembering one of my favorite places on earth. Last summer we had a great trip up there. I really enjoyed exploring the country, the nature, the people, learning about the beautiful culture. And I was planning to have 2 trips there this year, but unfortunately, as we all know, we're kind of grounded at the moment. But I am ready, as always. I'm like a coiled spring, ready to leap into action whenever the opportunity to guide comes around. So in the meantime, I'm planning as much as I can from my home here, but sometimes I'd really like to have a way to travel to Mongolia mentally, physically, if not physically, at least spiritually would be great. So today I'm thinking about making a special potion that will take me there. I thought about this a lot, what might work, and I hit upon the idea of making a White Russian. Now, you might wonder, why a White Russian for Mongolia? Well, there are a bunch of reasons, as we'll see, but I do want to say right off the start how different Mongolia and Russia are, in fact, just so I'm not coming off as dismissive of either one. For one thing, Russian is a Slavic language. Mongolian, many people don't know, is not related to Russian or Chinese. It's a Turkic language. So right there, it's very unique. And the uniqueness of Mongolia comes out even more when you visit it. So during the course of this experiment, we may actually make or invent a new kind of cocktail with Mongolian ingredients. We could just call it the Mongolian or come up with a more creative name for it. But we're going to take the White Russian as our starting point. Not only because Russia is one of Mongolia's 2 neighbors, but there are many ways in which I think the White Russian evokes Mongolia. Now, first of all, the relationship between Mongolia and Russia is a very close one. For centuries, including during the time of the famous Genghis Khan, tribes have moved back and forth between the landmass of Russia and Mongolia. So the border is very permeable in many ways culturally. Today there are Buryats and Kalmyks, which are Mongolian peoples, and they live inside of Russia, for example, around Lake Baikal. Now, beyond that, if you go to Mongolia, the signs you'll notice are all written in Cyrillic, and that's the influence of the Soviet Union. So yes, it's true that the Soviet Union left very visible reminders of its influence on Mongolia, but the influence is very strong from Mongolia onto Russia as well. It's just that being a traditionally nomadic people, Mongolians left fewer visible traces of their empires. Mongolians don't actually have any national cocktails of their own. The reason for this is that it's a nomadic culture, and the only form of alcohol that they had traditionally was called aireg. Now that is fermented horse's milk. It's fermented in a leather pouch, and it comes out as a very sour, kind of chunky substance. And the first time I went to Mongolia, I had a driver, and we pulled over by the side of the road at this little stand, and I was wondering what we were going to eat. And they served us the aireg in these bowls, and I took a little sip of it, and let's just say it's an acquired taste, and I hadn't acquired it yet. But my driver took it and just drank the whole bowl just so happily. So maybe one day I'll acquire the taste for aireg, but I haven't yet. It has about the same alcohol content as a beer. So that's the Mongolian alcohol. Again, it's made with horse's milk because horse's milk has a lot of sugar in it, so it ferments and makes more alcohol as it ferments. So one more good reason to make a White Russian to evoke Mongolia and hopefully transport myself there spiritually is the ingredients of the White Russian. Now these include vodka, which is very popular in Mongolia. There's a brand called Genghis Khan vodka, in fact, and it was obviously imported from Russia, but it's very popular in Mongolia now, the Russian vodka. I should also mention about the aireg, the fermented horse's milk, that it can be distilled to make a type of vodka called Shimin Arch. So that has a higher alcohol content. Now, if we were in Mongolia, maybe we would make the White Russian with the Shimin Arch. But I don't have any here, so I'm just going to use Smirnoff. But just remember that that's an option, and perhaps it can lead to a new cocktail called the Mongolian. We'll see. The next time I'm in Mongolia, I'll try making one, and I'll report back for sure on the results. Now, dairy is another important ingredient in the White Russian. You can make it with milk or cream, or some people even add ice cream. I'm going to use Bailey's Irish cream. It will result in a higher alcohol content. I hope that doesn't bother anybody. If there are any objections, let me know. No? Great. Perfect. We're in agreement. Glad about that. Now, cream and dairy is a very important part of Mongolian diet. Traditionally, they ate meat in the winter and almost exclusively dairy in the summer, when their bodies didn't need all that extra protein and they could get by on a lighter diet. So Mongolians would eat various types of yogurt, cheeses, and as I mentioned, the Erdek that could keep in a leather pouch for months on end. And their dairy products were made from yak's milk, goat's milk, camel's milk, sheep's milk, and horse's milk. So if you make a new cocktail called the Mongolian, you could use Mongolian vodka made from fermented horse milk and the milk of any of those animals. So there could be a whole range of different drinks that come out of this experiment. Unfortunately, I don't have those different types of cream and milk, and I also don't have the Shimin Arch, so I'm going to use Smirnoff. But when I do go back to Mongolia and I can get all those ingredients, I'll make another video and we'll make a Mongolian together and see what the results are. Well, I think I've pretty much justified my choice of the White Russian to transport myself to Mongolia. I mean, if a White Russian can't get me there, I don't know what will. So I guess it's time to flip up my clip-ons and get to work actually making this drink. Got some ice here. I'm not going to put too much because I don't want it to water down the drink too much as it melts. But put a little bit in the glass. Now the next step is to put an ounce of Kahlua into the glass. Half of this double shot. Here we go. And then next, we'll take the vodka. Now in Mongolia, remember you could use the Shimin Arch to make your Mongolian special cocktail. I'm using the Smirnoff. I'm going to pour that in with the Kahlua. And the third ingredient, I'm going to use my Bailey's. Now remember, you could use cream or milk, and in Mongolia, yak's milk or any of the other animals they produce milk with. And I'm going to put an ounce of that as well. Pour it on top. Now I'm at home here, so I'm going to use my chopstick. And there's a long relationship between Mongolia and China, of course, as well. Just look up the Yuan dynasty. But that's a whole digression. I don't think you want to stay here for that whole speech. So I'm just going to mix with my chopstick. Wow, it looks pretty good. Let's see if it can actually transport me across space and time to Mongolia, like I hope it will. Cheers in Mongolian is actually tulu. So if you're following along at home, I salute you, tulu. Let's take this journey together. Now I better flip my clip-ons down because in a moment I may be in a very different environment. Tulu. Flying like an eagle above the golden Gobi Desert. I see the Altai Mountains in the distance. I see eagles and Gobi bears and snow leopards. It's working. It's glorious. I'm back in Mongolia like I hoped I'd be. Wow, what a trip that was. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. I'm really glad to have had some company for this experiment. And like I said, I promise to report back when I make the Mongolian with all those Mongolian varieties of these essential ingredients. But for the moment, I'm glad we can travel to Mongolia this way. If you'd like to talk about Mongolia anytime, please just contact me. I'd love to discuss it. And I hope I can see you there in person sooner rather than later. But for now, baitla, thank you, and tolo, cheers.